I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
We are the Pandemonium.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Ignore what's going on with my head.
It's cute.
Winter has given me very dry scalp this season.
Same. I have psoriasis on my scalp, so it's...
So, I thought at first it was, just me, putting, product in my hair because my hair's decided it's going to be really curly now. And so, to enhance that product, except for, exfoliated my scalp last night, used a whole bunch of conditioner on it, and didn't put any product in whatsoever last night, and I could not stop scratching my scalp all night because it was just so itchy.
Can I tell you why?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a science thing, believe it or not. It's called barometric pressure.
Well, it sucks.
So there's increased, heat and increased, wind. And so the combination of those two things, with increased heat, it makes it colder. It's weird. It's a whole thing. I went on a whole deep dive and Josh is like, "Did you know about this?" And I was like, "Oh, I found your ADHD superpower."
But that's so cute.
Isn't it Tina's? Tina posts a lot of weather related stuff too.
I know Sylvia does.
Sylvia does too. I mean, I have psoriasis too. I started using the CeraVe shampoo, but I can only wash my hair every couple of days. I shower every day, guys. But we have combination hair. So I have combination straight and C4 hair. She has straight curly hair. So between the two of us. Anyway,
It's some of it is 2C, some of it is 2B, but it's very fine and thin. So I have to be it's annoying as fuck. Because my roots get oily really quickly while the rest of it doesn't. So it's just big ol' pain in the butt. Did you spill your drink? Oh, all I saw was you. It looked like you were wiping something.
I had to turn it around. So I've been sewing. Sylvia bought me stuff to make for her and AJ. I'm not saying what because I don't know if he listens to it.
I don't know either.
I'm sitting there. Yes, you do, but that's besides the point. So I'm sitting on the couch and I'm sewing everything and I have it set the opposite direction. So when I pick it up, I just turn it, sit, put it back on the thing. So that way the straw isn't facing a single direction. And it's just, anyways, on the handle.
That's fair.
Right. So we do have a teeny tiny update. Not really anything too, yeah, not anything too big. It's mainly personal. Uh, Big milestone today. We are at 20 weeks. So we have a big checkup today. I'm going on the podcast thing just to see if we have anything. We have 72 followers now. We still have the same amount on Instagram. Go to our YouTube. YouTube is still at 31, which is fine. And Spotify, I think, is still at 108. Once we do get to 100 followers on our Facebook page, we will be going through the follower count because I have a Cricut. We're going to be making you a custom tumbler. We're going to pick one out of the 100 who actually do listen to us, and we're going to tag them and we're going to reach out to them, and we're going to do a topic of their choosing for an episode. Now, mind you, it does have to be respectful. We can't pick anything too out there. But that's as far as update goes on that end. Do you know why we're wearing tomorrow's a big day in Hallmark history. So do you know why we're wearing pink and red?
Because It is St. Valentine's Day.
It is St. Valentine's Day. Do you know the story about St. Valentine?
Which one?
So, there's two. St. Valentine was a 3rd century Roman saint commemorated in Western Christianity on February 14th, and in Eastern, oh my God, I can't read. In Eastern Orthodoxy on July 6th. From the High Middle Ages, his feast day has been associated with a tradition of courtly love, not Courtney love, courtly. And he is also a patron saint of tyranny, epilepsy, and beekeepers.
That's a very odd combination.
Well, I mean, considering
Tyranny and
No. Terrell. Tyranny. Terni. Hold on.
the hell is that?
I think it's his city. Give me 1 second.
Because I thought you said tyranny, like
That's the name of the city. Tyranny.
No.
Terni.
I thought
Oh,
you
you
meant
thought
like
I
the
meant tyranny.
accent. Yes, and then I
No.
was like, tyranny,
Tyranny is a
leprosy,
city. It's a
and
city
then
in Italy.
beekeepers.
Tyranny is a city in Italy. It's the southern portion of the region of Umbria in central Italy. It is near the border of Lazio. And the city is the capital of the province of Tyranny, located in the plain of the river Nera. And it is northeast of Rome and south of the regional capital, Perugia. Perugia.
Okay, that makes more sense. He's a patron of a city,
Yes.
leprosy, and beekeeping.
Epilepsy.
Epilepsy.
Seizure. Not leprosy.
know
That is a different saint. There is a saint of leprosy.
But it's still that's an odd combination.
And the patron saint of leprosy is Father Damien. I had to
Okay.
look that up because, anyways. So there is another thing named for Valentine's Day, pre-Saint Valentine. It's based on the Christian feast days honoring martyrs named Valentine, merged with the remnants of the Roman pagan festival, Lupercalia, evolving over centuries from honoring saints and fertility rites to a widespread celebration of romantic love formalized by popes like Chaucer and mass-produced cards in the 1800s. So that's a thing. Plus, there's a Norse holiday roughly around that time, which,
Right.
I didn't write that down. That is Valisblot, which is the Feast of Valley. It's honoring Odin's son Valley for vengeance and new beginnings. And it's a historical a feast. I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but it's Husband's Day and Wife's Day, which occur midwinter, beginning of spring, focusing on family and community. So the more you know, shooting. If you didn't know, now you do. Anyways, it's been around for eons, so people saying it's a Hallmark holiday is true because Hallmark and all those other people needed to make more holiday. But this holiday wasn't just famous because of Hallmark. It also became famous because of the mob. So, Rachel, what do you think I would be covering on Valentine's Day that wasn't romance related?
Massacre.
You are correct. You know me far too well. So today we're discussing the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in good old Chicago. So the too long didn't read. The crime that would be known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre took place on the morning of February 14th, 1929. Inside the garage of Chicago's North Side, 7 members of George Bug Moran gang was lined up against a brick wall and unalived in a hail of gunfire by Tommy machine guns, also known as Thompson submachine guns. Adding to the deception, 2 of the gunmen were dressed in police uniforms.
This is a Pandemonium Witches podcast trigger warning. The following episode contains graphic violence and gruesome depictions. Listener discretion is advised.
Speaking of which, I love Chicago. Have you been there?
I have not, but I have seen the wall.
The gum wall?
No, the Massacre wall.
Well, there's a gum wall.
The wall got taken down and put back together in the Mob Museum in Vegas.
Yes, which I have been to. My grandfather wanted to go. I want to go see, he said. But no, Chicago's fantastic. I went for St. Patty's Day many eons ago. And my friend, that is the little person, was rented out the entire night to various bars as the quote-unquote leprechaun for the evening. I love him. His name is Seamus. He has a very, very thick Irish accent. I think he's in his 60s now, 60s or 70s. Funnier than all hell. Anyways, are you ready? We haven't done anything yet. Have you taken your meds?
Yes, I have.
That's right, you did. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Have you taken your meds?
Yes, I did. I took them
And
at
you have your hydration stations. Oh, good.
I was actually able
It's mine as well.
to have my shake today.
Yay.
So let's set the stage, shall we?
Yes.
We're gonna start from the beginning because that's the very good place to start, as Sound of Music has taught us. When the U.S. ratified the 18th Amendment in 1920, it outlawed the manufacture, importation, and sale of alcohol. And it didn't end America's thirst for it. It created a booming black market overnight. And I know there's been a huge pop-up over the last 10 years of speakeasies. So were you going to say something?
Oh, just that I sent you the photo that I took at the museum, which you're not supposed to do. But I was taking photos anyways, because, rebel.
Bro, that looks in pristine condition too.
But yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a potato picture because I'm trying to do it like nonchalantly because there's people that are walking through making sure nobody's taking photos or like doing shit they're not supposed to be doing. And so I'm just like, looks like I'm just texting, snap picture here. Nope, snap picture there.
I mean, I feel that. I went to the MGM Grand before they did the rebranding, and it was Wizard of Oz themed. And they had this huge exhibit there. This was before the ruby shoes got stolen. And then they found out, because once they found them, they found out that the two shoes had been swapped. So there were two different types of shoes and they had two different labels. Anyways, I took photos on my old Polaroid camera, which, fire demolished everything. But it was one of those things I don't think I'll ever forget because I ended up switching my orange juice with my grandfather's mimosa. And I didn't realize it. And so I was a drunk 12-year-old at MGM Grand. And the blackjack dealer
No.
realized it. It was funny. It was funny. But the dealer was like, "You're not supposed to have alcohol." I'm like, "I'm having orange juice." Very confused. But they put them in the same glasses. They're supposed to put them in different glasses. But the bartender got fired. I felt bad, but at the same time,
I mean, but the bartender should have known better.
They're supposed to put them in separate glasses. So the orange juice is supposed to go in a stout square glass, kind of like about that tall. The mimosas were supposed to go in a sort of like not a champagne glass, but kind of like a short stout champagne glass, which only had a small little, flute.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, it was like her second day on the job. I get it, but I was like, damn. But going back, Prohibition, all bad shit started coming out because everybody was starting to be little sneaky McSneakersons. Millions of Americans had no intent on giving up alcohol. someone was bound to meet the demand. Organized crime stepped in because, of course, mobsters, why not? So they began to fill the void. Alcohol was smuggled in from Canada and from overseas. Fun fact, I've been learning about this because I've been watching Antique House Hunters up in northern New York and Wisconsin and Minnesota and the northern states. And yes, I just said Minnesota and northern states. There's houses that have secret hatches from Canada to America that people used to use as a smuggling route. And I was like, I'm adding that to my list. We're adding that. We're doing it.
It's also how NASCAR got started was the rum runners or the hooch runners.
Yes. So it was also produced illegally at home. That's how we started getting the boom in moonshine as well. And sold in hidden bars and nightclubs known as speakeasies.
You also got really sick off of homemade alcohol if it wasn't made correctly, and they called it rot gut.
Yep. Bad hooch. Ow. One of my friends is going in for surgery. She just texted me. She's like, sorry, you're going to be MIA over the next couple of days.
It's
Okay.
understandable.
So these secret venues multiplied rampantly, especially in major cities, transforming Prohibition into an era of underground excess. So we had the Underground Railroads in San Francisco and LA, which were used during the Chinese Underground, which sucked for Californian history. I hated that. It went all the way across the northern and southern United States. And when I say underground, I don't mean like the Underground Railroad where it was above ground and I thought it was actually underground. No, it was underground instead of above ground. So it was the opposite. So I'm sitting here going, oh my God. Anyways, bootlegging quickly became one of the most profitable criminal enterprises in the entire country, turning small time street toughs into millionaires literally overnight. Enormous profits on the line, competition was ruthless, and nowhere was more evident than Chicago, with the epicenter of bootlegging during the 1920s. So, rival gangs exploded into full-blown turf wars, with alcohol shipments routinely hijacked and disputes settled at gunpoint. Because, why not?
I mean, because they just upgraded from doing knives to doing guns.
Precisely. And now I have to open Messenger. They got rid of the desktop Messenger, which I'm kind of pissed off about. But
Ugh, I hate that.
it is what it is. Excuse me. Here we go, Rachel. So, we're going to be talking about this guy in a second. So, armed with Tommy machine guns, rival gangs used violence as a business strategy. Al Capone's South Side gang rose to dominate Chicago's bootlegging scene, but Capone's ambition to control not just the city, but the entire upper Midwest was constantly under threat because it wasn't just Chicago that he was running. His most persistent rival was George Bugs Moran and the North Side Gang, a force that refused to bow to Al. But before we continue, we're going to talk about Al Capone and Bugs Moran because, we like our history.
Was your trash can a little too far?
I cleaned. And so whenever I clean, I move the trash cans to the outside of the room so I can easily grab them.
I forgot to put it back.
Yep. It's fine. So we talked about Al Capone very briefly on the Alcatraz episode. If you guys want to listen to that, it's on season 1, episode 98, which aired on 9/26 of 25. Moving on. So we have Alphonse, good name, Gabriel Capone. Oh, Gabriel. I miss Gabe. He's one of my best friends. He lives in the Philippines with his partner. By the way, if we ever want to go shopping in the Philippines, we have an open invite.
Sounds good.
I have to have money to go there, but besides
And a passport.
oh, I have one. I just have to renew it. Anyways, that's fine. So
Same thing.
Al was born January 17th, 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, to an Italian immigrant parents. Al rose from street-level crime to become the most powerful mob boss in Chicago during Prohibition. He dropped out of school at 14, quickly gravitated toward gangs in Brooklyn, and he joined the 5 Points Gang, where he worked under mob boss Johnny Torrio, which is the photo. It was during this time that Al earned the name Scarface after a bar fight left him with permanent facial scars, a nickname he abhorred. In 1919, Johnny brought Al to Chicago to work for a crime boss by the name of James Big Jim Colosimo. Colosimo was murdered in 1920, likely orchestrated by Torrio, and then Torrio took over and Al became his right-hand man. When Torrio was badly wounded in a assassination attempt in 1925, he retired to Italy, leaving America entirely, leaving Al in charge of the Chicago outfit of mob royalty. So, with the creation of the 18th Amendment, Al brought a complete criminal empire around bootlegging, speakeasies, gambling, schmex work, and at his peak, he earned an estimated, I forgot to write down what it is in today's money. If you want to look it up real quick, this is the 1920, so 1925. You ready? Okay. Okay. Not retirement, not reforming, recording. Okay. Al's organization earned an estimated $60 to $100 million a year. And that was in 1925, starting, which was an astronomical sum at the time, but in today's money, she's doing the numbers.
What was the year again?
1925.
And it was 60 million?
Million.
So 60 million would equate to 1,103,000,000 $804,571.
That's a lot of cheddar.
And so the other one was 100 million,
Yes.
which would be 1,839,674,285.
That is a fork ton of RVs, let me just say. So, Al was not a nice mob boss. I mean, there are no nice mob bosses aside from, like Hearst Media. People don't think of William Randolph Hearst as a mob boss. He was the mob boss of media. We can get to him a different day because I know we covered Hearst Castle last year. But anyways, I think we did. Did we? No, that was pre-rebranding. So we can actually do that for Serotonin Saturday. That's on my agenda. So he ruled through intimidation and extreme and severe violence. Chicago became a battleground as rival gangs fought over territory. especially against Bugs Moran. So violence culminated in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929 when 7 members of Moran's gang were uh, uh, unalived by men posing as police, an act widely believed to have been ordered by Al, but never actually proven. Despite his brutality, Al cultivated a Robin Hood-style public persona. People loved him. Why? Because he funded soup kitchens during the Great Depression.
I was about to say, because he gave back to his community. One of the only reasons why they would like mob bosses then.
He covered them, like whatever they needed. Here, I got you. Don't worry. Even though his
He
brain
took
at
care
the
of
end,
his fellow man.
right. Even though at the end his brain was riddled with syphilis and made it Swiss cheese. Besides the point, he was charming with reporters. On another note, the story goes that Al Capone, the notorious gangster, influenced the milk safety for lobbying for expiration dates after his niece got sick from spoiled milk. However, I did a deep dive on this. Did you know that we've been wrong? Oh, yes. We were wrong. So, historians say that this is most legend, but with proof, they did say that he did get into the milk business to find more profits when Prohibition ended. The tale highlights, with the need for milk safety and dates, the actual pasteurization and date labeling grew much later, driven by public health movements, not Al Capone.
I'm going to live in the little delusion that we had.
So he supposedly used his power to push for laws requiring sell-by expiration dates on milk bottles to protect consumers, especially children, because they were not milk, the plastic bottles, they were glass.
And not just that, but you would put the empty, like you would put the used empty bottles back outside and they would collect them, sterilize them, and refill them.
Yes. And there was like little doors from the inside your house to the outside. Well, Al
But not
didn't.
all the houses. Some of them that just got left on the doorstep.
Right. Well, Al didn't invent pasteurization. That was Louis Pasteur, which was already a thing. His takeover of the dairy companies like Meadowmore Dairies in Chicago meant he controlled some of the processed milk supply, adding to his notorious mark to the industry. So I found that out and I was like, holy crap, I'm wrong. The guffaw that my husband let out, it was like, and I was like, excuse me, sir.
It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
When you were raised with this, like, this is stories that even my grandfather would tell me. Like, did you know Eb Capone did these? And I was like, oh, no, I did not. No, he didn't. He didn't. It was just a viral word of mouth thing. Anyways, he portrayed himself as a businessman, not a criminal. He was like, I'm not a criminal. If the glove does not fit, I must acquit, kind of thing. He was ruthless and utterly paranoid and so superstitious.
I mean, you can't really blame him, but also he was Catholic. So again, can't blame him.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
It kind of is like second nature to Catholics. So, I mean,
It's true. It's true. Everybody's like, you're a bruja, you don't go to church. Okay, first of all, brujeria is based in Catholicism. Okay, second of all, I used to go to church until I was 22 because my mother and I had an agreement one holiday a year. I would go to church with her, and she always chose Christmas Eve, which was midnight mass. And I would always get sick. Found out it was because I was allergic to frankincense.
and you haven't been back since.
I would like not to die. Thank you.
That's fair.
So,
I'd rather you not die either.
please no. So, ironically, Al was never convicted of unaliving anybody or bootlegging. Ever. That's not why he landed up in jail.
it didn't mean that just because he didn't pull the trigger didn't mean didn't have other people do it for him.
Yes, but this was pre the time where you could get, second, what is it? It's like,
It's besides the point.
right. So in 1931, Al was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the harshest sentence for tax crime. Tax evasion.
Because it was the only thing they could get to stick to him.
So Al was sent to Alcatraz and his influence just disappeared. Years of untreated syphilis severely damaged his mental health. On an off note, I put, get tested. Don't be a fool. Wrap your tool. This damaged his mental health, leaving him confused and almost childlike. He was released in 1939 and he died, unfortunately, but fortunately, January 25th of 1947 at the age of 48 in his home in Florida. Al Capone remains one of the most recognizable figures in true crime history. He's a symbol of the Prohibition-era corruption, proof that organized crime thrived when laws were widely ignored, and a reminder that even the most powerful criminals can fall, not to bullets, but to actual paperwork because he refused to file taxes. Now, that being said, we're going to move on to his rival. Are you ready for bugs?
Sure. Bunny?
Moran! We're going to talk about George Clarence Moran.
I was hoping for some Looney Tunes.
This shit was Looney Tunes.
That's fair.
Right. So, George was a Prohibition-era gangster, leader of the North Side Gang. He was Al Capone's most persistent and one of the few men who openly challenged Al and his grip on the Chicago's bootlegging empire. George was born August 21st, 1893 in St. Paul, Minnesota, and he had a rough childhood marked by petty crime, theft, and repeated arrests. Unlike Al, George never tried to charm the press. He was abrasive, volatile, and deeply distrustful of authority, because same. Well, do you want to know how he got the nickname Bugs?
Did he have lice one too many times?
No, I hate that word. We do not discuss that word.
Well, because bugs.
No, it was not that. I am so sorry to our listeners who don't like bugs either. No, Rachel, you're on a timeout. No. His nickname Bugs came from his unpredictable temper and erratic behavior, and his rivals claiming he was crazy enough to be dangerous, aka bugged in the head.
I like my version better.
Wrong kind of bugs. No.
I mean, could you blame me, though? It was either that or roaches. So, I mean,
I'm fine with roaches. I lived in Virginia. There are flying swamp bugs everywhere.
That's fair.
I was on the phone with Rachel after I moved into my apartment, and I screamed the most unholiest of screams, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I think it's a roach." She goes, "Does it have wings?" And she goes, "It's a water bug. It is not a roach." And I said,
Palmetto bug.
"They fly."
Not all of them. Some of them do. Some of them don't have wings, but are absolutely massive. Water bugs have pinchers. They're toe biters.
I know. Anyways, my landlord didn't believe me until she came up one day and she saw one and she goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And I was like, "I don't live dirty. I am a very clean person." But that was too much. Anyways, George aligned himself with the North George aligned himself with the North Side Gang, originally led by Dean O'Banion, one of Chicago's most successful bootleggers, and of course, Irish. O'Banion was unalived in 1924 with a smashed nation, widely blamed on Al and his allies. So George rose the ranks. Following the unalivings of subsequent leaders of get this, Jaime Weiss and Vincent Druckey. George took full control over the Northside Gang, inheriting a violent and ongoing war with Al's Chicago outfit. Because, it's been ongoing. So George ran a massive bootlegging operation that smuggled alcohol, and primarily from Canada, not from down south or anything like that. His organization controlled most of Chicago's North Side and was locked in a brutal turf war with Al Capone for a couple of other neighborhoods. Unlike Al, George was openly hostile towards law enforcement and their corruption, and refused to cooperate with crooked politicians or police. The attitude that made him dangerous, isolated, and ultimately vulnerable. Meanwhile, Al was like 100% on board with getting people in his pocket. Being pregnant and trying to do this in one run without breathing is really hard.
I mean, your lungs are already getting crushed as it is.
We got this, though. I am not a wimp. Mama didn't raise no bitch. She raised a bitch, but I am not a bitch.
Sometimes a questioning bitch, but because we ask questions, because we nosy.
Yes. On February 14th, 1929, George was the intended target of what became the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 7 members of his gang were lined up and unalived inside a Northside garage by gunmen posing as police. He narrowly escaped death by, get this, arriving late. He reportedly saw what he thought were police entering the building and turned away.
So what you're saying is, me constantly being late to places actually saves lives. Okay, cool. See, Ma?
Right? And I mean, like today, I was late because I couldn't find pants. I did find pants. I'm wearing shorts, but still, besides the point.
You found some sort of bottoms.
I did. So the massacre destroyed the Northside Gang and marked the beginning of the end for George's massive power struggle with Al. After the massacre, George never recovered. His organization was shattered, and the Prohibition era was ending its end, and he drifted into irrelevance. He was arrested repeatedly for minor crimes and lived much of his later life broke and forgotten. Compared to Al, he became a nobody. He did end up getting arrested, and he died in prison on February 25th, 1957, at the age of 63. He died in the federal prison in Colorado, where he was serving time for a minor bank robbery. But because of his unbelievable fall from fame and grace, few people barely even noticed he died. So he was remembered as the man who refused to bow to Al Capone, the attendant victim of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a gangster who survived the bloodiest smash-nation hit in mob history, only to fade into obscurity. And it was where Al became legend and George became a cautionary tale of what not to do. I think both of them are a cautionary tale of what not to do because,
Oh, definitely.
Don't do crime. Don't do crime.
Don't do crime if you can't do the time.
So now we got our main villains in today's story. Let's discuss the main characters of the unaliving. So first off, we have the 2 Gunsberg brothers. I had to look up how to pronounce this name. German. Gusenberg. Not Gunsberg. Gusenberg. Gusenberg. They were Northside Gang enforcers by the name of Frank and Peter. I found their pictures, but they were kind of blurry. So,
I mean, the times weren't the best for taking crystal clear photos.
right. Adam Hayer, a business manager and accountant. He had his own accountant.
Did you say a moron?
George Moran. His last name is
Okay.
Moron.
I heard moron, like not smart person.
I just think I found the title for today's episode. Moron or Moron?
You're welcome.
I really do have to figure out the titles of these episodes on the fly, dude. So Adam Hare, business manager and accountant. Albert Halachek, also known as James Clark. He was a bootlegger and a moron associate. And Alfred Winshank, German, managed several moron controlled cleaning and dyeing businesses, often mistaken for George due to his similar appearance. He was his doppelganger. He looked just like him. Now, there was also one member that was not associated with the Northside Gang. He was just a friend. His name was Dr. Reinhard H. Schwimmer, an optometrist and occasional associate who liked to socialize with the gang members and was not an actual criminal. But I did do a deep dive, and he is not related to David Schwimmer from Friends. I was like, that is an odd last name, but apparently Schwimmer was very popular around that time. So 5 of all 7 victims were gangsters. Peter Gusenberg was 41. Frank, his brother, were 37. Albert Kalkchek was 42. Adam Hare was 40. Albert Weissenshank was 36. Reinhardt was 29. And he was just an optician. He was just like an ophthalmologist. And John May, 35, was an auto mechanic who did repair work for George. So, Valentine's Day, 1929. It's 10:30 a.m. It's still quite early. I mean, for everybody in that area, it was quite early. All right. So, it's Valentine's Day, 1929, 10:30 in the morning. They were inside the SMC Cartage Company garage. It was at 2122 North Clark Street on the north side of Chicago. And I'm saying it was the north side of Chicago because
The building is no longer there
precisely.
because part of it is in Las Vegas.
Right. I normally have to mute myself when you talk because otherwise I get double when I'm editing. So when you talk, I have to mute myself. So go like this. That's why we made it. So that's why I know you have to talk.
Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. I'm just giving you shit. So I did find a picture of the outside of the garage. So it was fairly small. It wasn't anything all that big anyways. I don't really care. Not about you guys. No, about the text messages that keep coming through from people I don't really want to talk to. They were waiting inside the garage, presumably for a meeting to buy a hijacked shipment of Canadian whiskey for a good price. For my husband, I too would like to talk to somebody about Canadian whiskey for a good price. But 4 men who were wearing, two who were wearing police uniforms pulled up in an actual police car, entered the garage, and ordered George's men to line up shoulder to shoulder against the wall in the garage. They didn't put up a fight because they believed that they were subject to a police raid. Back then, police raids happened all the time. They opened fire with 2 Tommy submachine guns and a shotgun. All 7 were shot, and all 7 were unalive. On a happy note, the dog didn't die. They had a German Shepherd dog named Highball that was tied to a car bumper in the garage who was away from the gunfire, which is good.
We don't like it when they kill the animals.
No, we do not. So I said I had a picture of Frank, right? So the people who were coming to unalive these guys, they were hoping to kill George himself, but he was not among the 7 victims, and they did look for him among the bodies. George was supposed to be there, but was late for the meeting, saw the police, and hightailed it the other way. If he had been on time, one can assume that 10 would have been unalived because he did have 2 guys with him at all times, making sure that he was safe. So,
Sorry, I had to sneeze.
so you got rid of your screen?
Because I don't like sneezing on screen?
Also don't like almost puking on screen, but yet we have it. I don't care. I've sneezed on screen before. I just mute myself.
Listen, I didn't know how many times I was going to sneeze or how violent it was going to be. So, better safe than sorry.
I mean, that's fair considering the fact that Josh goes through disco sneezes. Oonce, 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 oonce. And I'm like, are you done? It's cute though. Very cute.
Exactly. Anyways, carry on.
So let's go back to the victims. You remember Frank Gusenberg. He was the only one that didn't die immediately. Hail of gunfire from Tommy's submachine guns. He lived for 3 hours and refused to tell police anything.
Because Mama ain't raised no snitches.
He had 22 bullet wounds.
I think I have a photo of the autopsies of let me see.
While she goes through that, I'm going to keep going here. So, of course, he was rushed to the hospital where police were trying to question him. And in gangster fashion, he refused to say anything. One account having him saying that the police were responsible for the shooting, which is consistent with the fact that the 2 assailants wore police uniforms. And of course, I do have a photo of an actual Daily News article from the Mob Museum. So I did put that in there, which we will be linking the Mob Museum, of course, as one of our sources, because I did get a good chunk of my information from them. The massacre marked a turning point in public opinion towards organized crime. This is where the whole cops being buttheads turned from. Before it, the mob, Al Capone's in particular, was viewed by many Chicagoans as a heroic fare. You know, they wanted more mob bosses. Al enjoyed the widespread support among ordinary citizens and maintained powerful allies within the city's political and law enforcement circles because he did have politics and law enforcement in his pocket. But Jonathan Eeg, who is a Capone biographer, later wrote this about the massacre. From coast to coast, people suddenly seemed to be reaching the conclusion that a line had been crossed and that violence had become too much to bear. Author William Helmer says Al, too, must have regretted the massacre because its dire effects on his business. The Schmurders made the front page of every daily paper in the U.S. and in many foreign countries. Chicago police launched a great crackdown on the city's several thousand speakeasies, which cost Capone's outfit a fortune. Another Al Capone biographer, Lawrence Bergreen, eloquently summarized the national reaction. Newspapers across the country devoted an unprecedented amount of space to coverage of the mass murder of 7 men, and in the process sold millions of copies. The event impressed itself into the consciousness and the history of the nation like a dark fly in amber, which I think is kind of poetic. About a month after the unalivings, a delegation of prominent Chicago citizens traveled to the White House to meet newly elected President Hoover. They urged him to send federal help to rein in the unchecked crime plaguing the Windy City. And Hoover responded with a blunt directive to his attorney general, which was William B. Mitchell, get Capone. It took nearly 2 years, but the campaign succeeded. Through meticulous work of the Treasury Department's Special Intelligence Unit, led by, I love this name, Elmer Irie, Capone was ultimately convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, not for unaliving or bootlegging, but failing to pay his taxes. So, of course, we have my personal favorite out of all of the mobsters, as far as guys who were pretty looking, who looked a certain way. Not Pretty Boy Floyd. No, no. Not for me. Several suspects were taken into custody, including Jack McGurn, but prosecutors were unable to build a case that would actually hold in court against Jack. So, investigators identified multiple suspects and made several arrests, including Al's bodyguard, Machine Gun Jack Gurn, but authorities were unable to assemble a case strong enough to prosecute anyone for the killings. This man is very good looking. Not as good looking as my husband, but let me tell you, when I had to do a lot of research in the 5th and 6th grade, this guy was definitely my heartthrob aside from Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. So, one widely cited account claims that Jack orchestrated the massacre by luring George's men to the Clark Street garage with the promise of a delivery of Canadian whiskey, allegedly hijacked by Al. Others, including George himself, later challenged this version of events because Jack was formally charged in connection with the massacre, but he provided an alibi, claiming he spent the entire day at his hotel with his girlfriend, Louise Roll. Soon later, he married her, preventing her from being compelled to testify against him, which is the spouse clause. The press quickly gave Louise a nickname that would stick, the Blonde Alibi. How about that for a nickname?
They're a little out of order, but ta-da! Including the original bullets that were in the bodies.
Let me look. Holy crap.
I included the coroner's report as well.
My screen would not let me look at the rest of the messages. So I guess I can't have that up while we're recording. It's fine. So, Cook County Coroner Herman Bundenson meticulously gathered evidence from the crime scene and convened a coroner's jury, which was made up of prominent local businessmen and leaders to examine the killings. One of the jury's first priorities was determining whether actual police officers had taken part of all of this mass unaliving. To answer that question, they brought in Dr. Calvin Goddard, a New York-based pioneer in forensic ballistics. Dr. Calvin was presented with an extensive cache of evidence recovered from the garage, including 70 spent .45 caliber cartridge casings. His analysis quickly revealed that the rounds had been fired from Tommy's submachine guns. He further concluded that 2 separate Tommies were used, one firing approximately 50 rounds and one firing only 20. Dr. Calvin's first assignment was to determine whether police firearms had been used in the unalivings because they also had Tommy guns. He obtained test fire bullets from several Tommy guns issued to the Chicago Police Department and compared them under a microscope to the bullets recovered from the victims' bodies. His conclusion to the coroner's jury was definitive. None of the police weapons matched any of the victims' wounds. The finding led investigators to believe the killers had merely worn police uniforms as a disguise and stolen a police car. Months later, a seemingly unrelated case cracked the investigation wide open. We love stuff like this. After a sheriff's deputy was unalived in rural Michigan, rural Michigan, I got it.
Yes, you did. So proud.
Thank you. They searched the home of the suspect, Fred, aka Killer Burke, uncovering a hidden cache of weapons. 2 Tommy guns seized in the house were sent to Goddard for testing, and both were conclusively linked to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Fred Killer Burke began his criminal career as a teenager in Kansas City after relocating to St. Louis. He rose through the ranks of Egan's Rats, the city's most feared crime syndicate. It sounds like a popular, pop punk band in the 80s.
If only.
It's a great name, Egan's Rats. Carrying out robberies and contract killings. So probably not that great, if they did that. When many of his associates were arrested, Fred moved on to Michigan, where he associated with Detroit's the Purple Gang. And he became a suspect in the 1927 unalivings of 3 men. Fred eventually made his way to Chicago, where he aligned himself with Capone. By the time of the massacre in 1929, he had already been considered a prime suspect. He quickly disappeared back to rural Michigan. Rural Michigan.
You said it right the first time.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rural.
So he was living under the alias Frederick Dane. 10 months later, on December 14th, he had his luck run out. Or did it? How, you may ask? I'm glad you did, because people who listen to our podcast go, how? Tell me how. I'm glad you asked in your car driving 65 miles an hour. He was involved in a car accident in St. Joseph, Michigan. When a patrolman, Charles Skelly, attempted to intervene, Fred shot him, unaliving him, and fled the scene. After crashing his car on the outskirts of town, Fred hijacked another vehicle and escaped. Inside the wrecked car, police discovered documents that led them to Fred's nearby residence. There, they uncovered the hidden arsenal, the weapons cache, including the Tommy guns. The weapons and ammunition were sent to Dr. Goddard and his crime lab in Chicago, where test firings confirmed that both Tommy guns had been used in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So, the Chicago police now had the murder weapons, but no one was in custody for the crime. Sippy, sippy.
So what happens next?
Well, one of the most wanted men in America, Fred Killer Burke, fled to a farm near Green City, Missouri, where he assumed the identity of successful businessman Richard F. White. While in hiding, Fred married Bonnie Porter. She was a 20-year-old nurse, and they lived quietly on her father's farm for a while. Not a long time.
Until he fucked up.
Oh, no, he didn't. But a local resident and farmer, Joe Hunsaker, grew suspicious of the newcomer and became convinced he was actually Fred Burke after recognizing him in photographs in True Detective magazine.
I love that.
Despite Joe's repeated warnings, local authorities initially dismissed his concerns and said, "Oh, you crazy, Joe. That's not who you think it is, you crazy." That changed the early morning hours of March 26, 1931, so it'd only been like 2 years. Police finally raided Burke's home and found him in bed. Although weapons were within reach, Fred surrendered without a fight.
Because his wife was laying right there.
Probably. I mean, she was a nurse, so we don't know if she was working at the time. But Burke was extradited to Barron County, Michigan, where he was convicted of unaliving patrolman Charles Skelly and sentenced to life in prison. He served 9 years at Marquette State Prison before dying of a heart attack in 1940. Though widely believed he had taken part in the Valentine's Day Massacre, Fred was not formally charged with any of the unalivings. So we have all of these people who could have done it. Nobody's copping to it.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
So Al, on the other hand, at this time was in Florida at the time of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and insisted he had no involvement or knowledge that anything had ever happened, and he was sorry that they were unalive. He was never arrested or prosecuted for the time because people believed him. So even though that all happened, Al's downfall followed very quickly, like subsequently, like dominoes falling. In the months after the massacre, he was sent to prison twice, effectively bringing his reign over Chicago's organized crime scene to an end. In the aftermath of the unalivings, Al was summoned to the National Mob Conference in Atlantic City, where crime bosses agreed he needed to disappear from public view and be gone. To make that happen, arrangements were made for Al to be arrested in Philadelphia on a weapons charge. Allegedly. The conviction resulted in a 10-month prison sentence, forcing Al out of circulation and marking his beginning of his end. While Al denied any role in the massacre, the Treasury Department's Special Intelligence Unit had quietly set their sights on him and said, "I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to look you up." The unit specialized in tax evasion cases. They spent years meticulously tracing all of Al's finances and ultimately assembling enough evidence to bring him to trial. Securing a conviction would be no easy task, as Capone was one of the most powerful men in Chicago.
I mean, the government wanted him gone just as much as fellow mobsters, so I mean, they kind of worked together on that part.
Well, of course. I mean, it was Hoover. Hoover was responsible for the collapse of a lot of mob junctures at that point. There was California, Texas, New York, Florida, Chicago, and a couple in the Pacific Northwest that were different mob syndicates. And they just started to fall apart. And I was like, how? And it's because they had a movie about it about 10, 20 years ago with that guy in The Notebook. What's his name? Ryan
Gosling?
That one. And it was a mob movie that was loosely based on a couple of these other verbally told stories that happen in Hollywood. It's a thing that happened. So he had police officers and politicians in his pocket. Witnesses were either too afraid or too loyal to actually testify against him. But the so-called T-men, the guys who were coming after him for tax evasion, Al couldn't actually intimidate them. They had a detailed paper trail showing massive profits and unpaid taxes for decades. Fearing Al would intimidate or unalive two key witnesses, federal agents kept them hidden out of state until the moment they were needed in court. When Judge James Wilkerson learned Capone planned to tamper with the jury, he took an extraordinary step, swapping in an entirely new jury on the morning the trial began. Like the shell game, you know? October 17th, 1931, the jury returned with a guilty verdict, and Al was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, one of the harshest for tax evasion sentences. And this was before they came out with the white-collar prisons that they have now, you know? Because Martha Stewart had a full kitchen that she had access to and was knitting a storm in hers.
I mean, she didn't have much else of things to do, so I mean, might as well be productive.
Very true. So he would serve most of that time behind bars at Alcatraz, where his power and influence finally evaporated. But at the other prisons, he had like a full library. He was able to get, 5-star meals delivered to him. It was like he was living the lush life.
I mean, like we also discussed with the Alcatraz episode, he still had some nice things in his cell there, too. Just not nearly as nice as other prisons.
Well, Alcatraz, they didn't allow nice things to come in. He had his guitar, his banjo, and his harmonica and a few other items like some books, but that was the extent. Um, because none of the guards were able to be influenced by him.
Right, but still, that's better than what a lot of the other prisoners had. So he still had some things that were better.
True, it's not like the Birdman of Alcatraz actually had more than anybody else because he actually had, I think, 2 or 3 published books while he was finishing his time at Alcatraz. But anyways, I will I will deep dive on that topic any time of the day because that is I love going to Alcatraz. I hated it, but I loved it. So no one was ever actually prosecuted for the massacre. The evidence gathered at the time, combined with the revelations that surfaced years to follow, including people who deep dive on this case, no one was charged. So who did it?
It's like a whodunit novel. You don't know who did till the end.
True. However, there is a consensus that points to a St. Louis crew, based in there, known as the American Boys. It was a group of non-Italian gangsters who worked for Al Capone. And he reportedly came up with that nickname. And early clues began to narrow the focus, and one eyewitness recalled a gunman dressed as a police officer was missing a front tooth. This was a very unusual detail that matched the Fred Burke, who was known to be missing an actual front tooth. Later, a search of Fred's rural hideout in Michigan uncovered 2 Tommy machine guns, but Chicago authorities wanted to prosecute Fred for the killings, but Michigan refused to release him. Instead, he was convicted there for murdering the police officer Charles and spent his life in prison. However, in November 1931, Cook County Coroner Herman Bundenson officially closed his inquest, concluding that the 7 men had been unalived without naming anyone responsible. For 4 years, it was untouched. And then it took an unexpected turn. With that, I need to run to the restroom.
And with that, come back for the following episode. No, not really. I could not resist.
Ran like a bat out of hell when I tell you that little brisket kicked my damn bladder. What are you laughing at?
Is that into the sister group?
We have 3 group chats. We have text messages, we have Facebook, and we have Instagram.
the top comment is from the person that the song is by, and she's like, "Oh Lord, now why y'all use my little song for this?"
Because it's funny. That's why.
Right.
Okay. So, 4 years later, case took an unexpected turn. Federal agents arrested a man named Byron Bolton, who stunned investigators, offering a detailed confession and accounts of what happened the day of St. Valentine's Day massacre. According to FBI reports, Bolton claimed the massacre was planned as late as 1928 at a Wisconsin resort owned by Fred Goetz, with Al Capone present. So he identified the shooters as Fred Goetz, Gus Winkler, Fred Burke, Raymond Cranet Nugent, and Bob Carey. Bolton also named 2 lookouts stationed across the street, Jimmy the Swede Morand and Jimmy McCrusson. Many Chicago investigators believed Bolton's account rang true and was later corroborated by 2 additional sources. Irene Goetz, the wife of Fred Goetz, and Georgette Winkler, the wife of Gus Winkler, who both confirmed key details. Georgette stated that the 4 men who entered the garage were Burke, Goetz, Winkler, and Nugent, and Burke and Goetz wielding the Tommy machine guns. She identified the lookouts as Morand and Bolton, and suggesting that Bolton altered his story to avoid implicating himself. Talk about a giant dumpster fire.
Oh, yeah, completely.
So, despite the confessions being corroborated not just by each other, but the wives, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover declined to pursue the case, reportedly viewing the massacre as a local law enforcement matter. Though none of the American boys were ever prosecuted for the massacre itself, most met violent, karmatic endings. Would you like to know how? I believe a resounding yes, please, was added in the comments. Fred Burke was convicted in 1931 for unaliving a Michigan police officer and died in prison. Bob Carey was unalived to death. Bob Carey was unalived by Pew Pew in 1932 in what authorities labeled a Schmurder sewer slide. Gus Winkler was unalived in 1933, allegedly on the orders of Frank Needy, Al Capone's successor, who feared he was corroborated with FBI and federal authorities. Frank Goetz was pew-pewed down in Cicero, Illinois in 1934. Raymond Craneck Nugent was last seen in 1930 with Al Capone in Florida and then vanished. Completely disappeared. No one has seen or heard from him since, and believed to have been murdered.
I didn't mean to unmute myself. So he pulled a Carol Baskin's husband.
Carol Baskin killed her husband. I still have never seen The Tiger King, and I don't think I will. I can't.
You don't need to. It's fine.
Okay. You'll watch it for me?
Apparently I was unmuted. I've already seen it.
Oh, okay, good. So you did watch it for me. So it is reasonable to assume that the unalivings of Winkler and Goetz and possibly Carey and Nugent, I say possibly for Nugent because nobody knows where he's at. He gone. He's still on the missing persons database, even though it's far after he's dead. Well, it could be.
I'm pretty sure he's dead by this point, but you never know.
You never know. So they were intended to silence anyone who would talk about the incident. So still, the absence of dramatic courtroom reckoning has long left the St. Valentine's Day massacre without a legal conclusion. Lingering void is one of the most infamous chapters of Chicago's organized crime history. So let's have a recap. No one was ever convicted for the massacre, despite eyewitnesses, confessions, and the recovery of actual murder weapons. 2. The massacre marked the beginning and the end of the Prohibition-era gangsters operating openly, and after February 14th of 29, the public largely turned against organized crime because Batman. So, number 3, the killings directly helped push the federal government to prioritize taking down Capone, even though he was never charged in connection with the unalivings of these guys. 4, the weapons used in the massacre were forensically linked to Fred Burke, one of the earliest and most famous uses of modern ballistic science in an actual criminal investigation. 5, the unalivers used police uniforms, permanently damaged public trust with police and law enforcement, and led to tighter controls on police identification and equipment. So tighter hold on like cars and guns and uniforms and all that fun stuff. I lost count. 6, George Moran, the intended target, outlived most, if not all, the men who tried to unalive him, but died broke, forgotten, and in federal custody. 7, nearly everyone believed to have participated in the unalivings were unalived themselves either violently or in prison, reinforcing the idea that silence was enforced long after the gunfire of the mobsters stopped. The last 2 points. St. Valentine's Day Massacre helped cement Chicago's reputation as the gang capital of the United States, a label that the city struggled to shake for decades and still hasn't shaken. Last but not least, despite its notoriety, the massacre occurred inside a simple garage, not a hideout, not a basement of a house, not a grand estate. This underscored how quickly ordinary spaces can quickly become sites of the history's worst violence. So this didn't end with justice. It ended with silence. The men believed to have pulled the triggers were picked off one by one, vanished, or died behind bars for other crimes, not even the crimes that we talked about today. George survived, but lost everything. Al never faced charges, but was put a federal target on his back. And in the end, the massacre didn't prove who won Chicago's gang war. It proved something else completely entirely, that in Prohibition-era America, you didn't need a courtroom to close a case, just fear, money, and enough bodies to make people stop talking. So, 7 dead, no convictions, and the case is still marked as open by the FBI. That was the case of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Even though I already knew a good chunk of it, I enjoyed listening to you tell it again.
I appreciate it because, like, I got upset with myself when I found out about the whole milk thing. I was like, listen here, bitches. That was not what I was taught about childhood.
That's fair.
But what's worse is, like, I grew up knowing certain things about some of these gangsters, and I ended up learning, like, so much more. And, like, my grandfather never put them on a pedestal. He just liked learning about them. But at the same time, I'm sitting here going, this is some nasty crap.
But yeah,
Like,
they definitely weren't I want to say clean people, but they weren't that either. Health standards, community standards, any of it. They were not clean. They were definitely dirty people.
very much so. And, like, ended up coming back to bite them in the ass. So even though they had amassed all of this wealth and all of this notoriety, it didn't mean anything in the end. And like, that's one of the things that really pissed off one of my ex-best friends, because she was like, you just want to become famous. And I was like, no, I don't.
Death comes for all of us. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you have or anything. You can't take it with you when you go. So, I mean, enjoy it while it's here.
I want to be able to be out of debt, which we're almost done with. I've been snowballing for years. And now I taught Josh about snowballing. So that's fun. We've just paid off 2 of his credit cards, and I have another 2 left. But like, it's small things. And the only thing I want to do is be able to raise my kids to be kind and just humans. I think I've done a pretty good job with the kids I have. And to be able to live a good life and a happy life. That's it. Screw fame, screw fortune. If we end up making we don't make this podcast for money. We put money into it. Both of us put money into it. We make jack shit. But you know what? We're happy.
We make love and we receive love. We get paid in love.
We do.
And for now, that's all that we need.
That's it. I mean, we're a little feral. We're a little neurodivergent. And by a little, I mean a lot. I need to go eat. I need to go make some actual food because somebody is hungry and it's not me.
I mean, it's close to lunchtime anyway, so I mean,
I should probably eat before my appointment anyways, but you know. As always, in true Pandemonium fashion, stay feral.
bite the hand.
And we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye. Okay, bye.
Well, party possums, that's today's dose of the Pandemonium. Thanks for listening and watching the ADHD chaos. Review, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next week for more continued madness. And as always, stay feral.